So welcome to Nick Sibicky's Music Production Secrets. As you are about to see here, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to sidestep away from Cubase just for these next couple of videos and talk primarily about acoustics, otherwise known as, how sound works. And this is a really big deal if you were trying to make music in the studio, because number one, any sound you make in a studio to record through a microphone will be affected through acoustics, often very directly, as well as any sound you listen to in any environment will also be affected by the acoustics, or in other words, how the sound responds to that environment. So understanding acoustics and also just some basic sound principles is really important in making your mix sound as good as possible. So I know the last few videos, again, I just really excited to show you guys how to get in there and start working and start making music, and I think that hands-on approach is so important, but it's really important that we also take a step back and study this thing for really what it is. So we're going to start here. I got my Wacom tablet out for this and a little bit of notebook paper that I think you'll be able to see okay on the screen. The first question is, what is sound? And I'll write sound in my horrible Wacom handwriting here. I'm actually partially just using it so I can practice using this tablet. So what is sound? And you might say, well, sound, right, is a wave. Oh man, this is so sloppy. There you go. I'll underline it though. That makes it look less sloppy. It's going to look like a kindergarten gave you guys this lecture at the end of this thing. All right, so sound is a wave. And what does that mean? I mean, everybody knows that, right? Sound, it's a wave. Sound, it's a wave. And some of you might even say, well, sound, that means it's a frequency, right? So it's a frequency, and you guys are all excited about frequency. And I've been teaching, college level now for 8 years, I guess, 7.5, let's say, more than that, I guess. Let's do the math here. Probably 9.5 years. I've been teaching college level music courses and sound engineering courses. And if I ask any of the Intro 101 courses, what is sound? These are the two kind of responses that I usually get. Sound is a wave, or it's a frequency. And then if I ask, so what do you mean by that or this? Everyone goes, crickets. So let's start exploring these two things. All right, so first, yes, sound is a wave, which means that it's energy that travels through a medium. And this is very different than something like light. That's my light handwriting. That's pretty terrible. Or how about like bullets? I hate to use violent metaphors here, but bullets are particles that travel through space. Light is both a wave and a particle. Light is kind of a special case altogether, but let's compare sound primarily with bullets. All right, so here's sound. When you make a sound, let's go down here. I'm going to change my pen color. I think that's pretty easy to do. Let's go green. When you make a sound, let's say you're talking like I'm doing right now, what you're doing is essentially projecting kinetic energy. You're actually moving the air molecule or particle, right next to your larynx or vocal cords. Let's just say in front of your mouth for right now. So here's that molecule. Hey, pen, there we go. Drawing green molecule, and you're going to move it. And you're just going to move it just a tiny bit. And that air molecule is going to go forward, and it might bump into one or two other air molecules. And guess what's going to happen there? Well, those two air molecules might bump into another few air molecules. So these are my little circles are the molecules in case you haven't figured that out. And those molecules will then, guess what? Bump into more air molecules, and there you go, there's your sound. Now notice, this is the important distinction that we have to compare with a bullet. Let me finish up my drawing here. That at the end, we have all these different air molecules moving. I have, let's use this highlighter. Is this a highlighter? It is. So check out all these air molecules that are moving. And also notice where this original air molecule ended up. It did not end up all the way over here. Rather, it bumped into all of these other molecules. And those molecules bumped into other molecules, and those bumped into other molecules. And that's how the sound propagates throughout the room. This is very different than a bullet. If you have a bullet, basically you have a gun. Here's my laughable drawing of a gun. I thought I was getting good at drawing too. I really did until right now. This is not a very good gun. Here's the trigger. All right, so there's my gun. It doesn't shoot straight, obviously. But, so there's my gun, and it's going to fire this molecule, this bullet, right? And that bullet is actually literally going to go all the way over here until it hits the target. There's target. Okay, that's very, very different than this wave idea. And it's really this wave idea that makes sound so cool and so fascinating, right? This is pretty easy to understand, right? You have a gun, you take this molecule, and you physically move the molecule all the way across the room. You give enough energy so it just keeps going. With sound, that doesn't happen. You only move this molecule just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, but that's enough. If you do it with enough force, let's say it will bump into the next one, and that'll continue outward. Okay, so first, we understand that this is what makes it a wave, okay? It's sort of like the ocean, right? When you have water, here's the similar metaphor. Here's my sea, here's my beach. So here's you standing on the shore, who is just calmly enjoying another day at the beach. And let's say we have an ocean wave. Here's the wave, right? So that looks like a shark, I know, but that's a wave. Or a sailboat, I don't know. I get distracted too easily, I guess, from these drawings. Here, you get the idea. There's the wave, and it's coming towards you. Right, and what's actually happening, this wave is way below the surface, and it's actually this energy. It's really not, it's not like these water molecules are actually moving all the way over here. Rather, the energy is being transferred. All these water molecules and this energy that's there is then basically bumping into these. So then this wave will actually go there. And then all these molecules will then bump into this wave. And it's basically pushing the energy throughout the ocean until it eventually comes up to the shore, where it goes up even higher, because as the ground takes away space for this wave, it goes up higher, and then it splashes you and gets you all wet, just like that. But notice how this molecule over here didn't end up over here. Just like as if you had a boat way out here. Whoop, that's not what I wanted. A boat way out here, that's not a boat. That's a, I don't know what that is. Here, new plan, forget the boat. Seaweed. Everyone loves seaweed, right? No, we all hate seaweed. I hate seaweed in particular. All right, so here's a patch of seaweed, right, sitting on top of the ocean. When a wave comes, this wave doesn't push the seaweed all the way over here and on top of you. It might if the seaweed's right here, right? If the seaweed's right here and the wave goes up, you might get that seaweed. But this seaweed over here stays over here. And if you don't believe me, just go to the beach. I know I'm making this video in the middle of December, and not many of you can go to the beach right now, but just trust me, okay? Do it, or take a vacation and go somewhere nice. You'll see the seaweed stays way out here, away from everybody else. Okay, so this is what it means when it travels as a wave. When we talk about sound as a frequency, all we're saying is how frequent these waves are. That's it. So, as these waves come towards shore, if you get hit with a new wave of water, and I've kind of scribbled myself out of being able to draw anything else on this page, I think. Maybe we'll use a light blue for these new waves. If you get hit by a wave once every second, right, so this wave comes in, hits you, splash, and this wave pushes this wave, and then it comes in and hits you again another second later, and another wave comes in, and this is bouncing all the way around, right, wave, 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 and a new wave hits you a second later. That just means the frequency of that wave is 1 hertz, or 1 cycles per second. We abbreviate hertz, Hz. So we have sound, we know it's a wave, and when people say it's a frequency, that just means it's going to be recurring. That's it. There's nothing else to it. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to it, but at least as far as conceptually, that's it. That's what we mean when we say sound as a frequency. You could say, almost this is what you normally think of when you say frequency. If you say that I take a bath once a day, one day, right? You take a bath with a frequency of 1 day. Once a day, this happens. Same thing with sound. We will vibrate the air molecule, right, going back to this diagram, maybe once every half a second, or once every, thousandth of a second. It happens, it recurs every so often, right? Every so often this molecule will bump into this one, and then a thousandth of a second later it'll bump into this one again, and again, and again, and again. And one thing I tell my students that I don't just tell them, it's true, but that to try to drive this idea home is that, if you have a whole bunch of chairs in a room, where's my chair? Here's my chair drawing. That's the worst chair ever. All right, more chairs, more chairs. And there's a whole bunch of sleepy students sitting in these chairs. Let's make them pink because, well, they should be pink. That's a person in a chair, right? Here's a person in a chair, here's a person in a chair, right? If they were shrunk down to the size of air molecules, first of all, if I were talking, basically I would be pushing the air molecule in front of them, which would then push this guy and then push this guy. But not only that, we hear frequency, as pitch, as musical notes. So this is why people say something like A440. This is a note that we tune to. That means that middle A on the piano is actually oscillating or vibrating, being pushed 440 times a second back and forth. So I tell them, all right, you're sitting in a row. If I were actually able to do this and hit you all, just bouncing off each other, and I were able to kick the first person's chair back at 440 times a second. First of all, there'd be a lot of screaming if I was kicking someone 440 times a second. They'd probably, although I would get a cool new nickname, probably something like Chun-Li or something. But if I was kicking the first person at 440 times a second, do you know what you'll hear, other than the screaming? Well, I'll hear A440. I'll actually hear that note as you know it on the piano. Now there'll be lots of other noise and other sounds associated, but the fundamental pitch, right, the real thing that you'll hear is that boop, if I can kick your chair 440 times a second. And this is how all musical instruments work. Basically, if you're a guitar player or a violinist, you have a string, and then that string just goes back and forth. And if it's going to play an A on the piano, it's going to go back and forth 440 times a second, piano 2. If you play the flute, that's my flute. Oh, that's a sad-looking flute. There's your mouthpiece. It's kind of short. You get the idea. But the flutist is vibrating the air column, actually just vibrating the air back and forth at 440 times a second. If you play trumpet, same kind of idea, except you're, instead of blowing air across the hole that sets the whole thing into motion at a certain speed, this is not a trumpet, is it? Well, that's a front view of a trumpet, right? So there's the bore and there's the sound hole. Maybe you can see a little valve underneath. That kind of looks like a lollipop. Okay, now it looks like an eyeball. Oh, this is getting worse. Okay, if you're a trumpet player though, right, you're vibrating your lips back and forth, you know, enough times to get the trumpet to vibrate back and forth the air inside the trumpet, let's say that 440 times a second. And that's why everybody can sing and play the same note. Vocalists, right, your vocal cords, you got inside your larynx, you got these two flaps of weird looking flesh. They'll vibrate back and forth 440 times a second, and it'll sound like boop, okay? So it has nothing, I mean, frequency has nothing to do with how the sound travels. It really just has everything to do with how often do we hit the air molecule right in front of us. The more we hit it, the higher the frequency. Okay, that's your quick introduction. Come back for the next video and we'll see what makes a sound loud.